Okay, imagine this. You're deep into your UPSC preparation, right? Surrounded by current affairs notes. And suddenly, news breaks critical Indian military systems.
Mm.
They're just offline.
Mm.
No bangs, no explosions, nothing you can see, just silence.
Yeah, that's a chilling thought.
It really is. And it's not science fiction, it's a genuine possibility. Our vital space assets being, well, crippled silently.
And understanding this, especially for your UPSC journey, thinking about silent warfare, India's strategic response, it's absolutely crucial.
Couldn't agree more.
So yeah, today's deep dive is all about that. We're tackling a really key area for anyone prepping for the UPSC mains, current events, even prelims could touch on this.
Right.
It's the threat, the potential threat of China's non-kinetic counterspace capabilities, specifically aimed at India's satellites.
And we're basing this discussion on an article from Swaraja, correct?
That's the one, an insightful piece.
So our mission today, let's be clear, is to really unpack this threat. We need to look at the technologies China might use, and then analyze India's response, particularly Mission Shakti, and critically, where its limitations might lie against these kinds of attacks.
Exactly, because this isn't just like abstract tech talk.
No.
It gets to the heart of modern warfare, India's strategic challenges. It directly feeds into your UPSC prep defense, tech, international relations. It covers all that ground.
Okay, so let's start setting the scene. We usually think of conflict, things blowing up, kinetic stuff.
Traditional warfare, yes. Physical destruction.
But this is different. You mentioned silent attacks aimed at space assets.
Precisely. That's the emerging landscape. And it's, well, deeply concerning. The focus shifts to disabling assets without necessarily creating a big explosion in space.
Okay, let's break that down. Why are satellites so important? I mean, obviously they do a lot, but for the military specifically.
Oh, they're absolutely fundamental now. Think about it. Surveillance, they're our eyes in the sky, the backbone of strategic intelligence.
Right, seeing what others are doing.
Then there's communication. Secure comms over vast distances, essential for command and control, linking troops, ships, aircraft, and navigation. GPS, or our own Navigate. Everything from troop movements to guiding smart weapons relies heavily on satellite navigation.
Wow. So if those systems go down, even temporarily,
it could effectively paralyze the armed forces.
Yeah.
Blind, deaf, lost, before any conventional fighting even starts.
That is a sobering thought, and that's where this non-kinetic idea comes in. Attacks that disable without, physically smashing something.
Exactly. The aim isn't necessarily debris creation, which causes problems for everyone. It's about making the satellite useless when you need it most. And China's been investing heavily in a whole range of these non-kinetic tools.
Okay, this is where it gets really fascinating and maybe a bit scary. The Swaraja article digs into China's potential arsenal, lasers, for instance. Sounds futuristic, but it's real.
Oh, very real. And they can be used in a couple of ways against satellites. Lower power lasers can basically dazzle the optical sensors.
Dazzle, like shining a torch in someone's eyes.
Sort of, yeah. The article mentions India's Risat-2B as a potential target. Think of blinding its camera or radar sensor temporarily.
Risat-2B is one of our key surveillance satellites, isn't it? Uses radar imaging.
It does. So even a temporary disruption during a critical time could severely hamper our intelligence gathering.
And it's not just temporary blinding, is it? The article mentions higher-powered lasers, too.
Right. These could potentially cause permanent damage to the sensitive instruments on board. The article points to China developing a 1-megawatt pulse laser.
1 megawatt. That sounds incredibly powerful.
It represents a significant jump in directed energy tech. And there's concern it might be compact enough for future space-based platforms, though ground-based is the current focus.
Ground-based? From where?
Well, the article notes researchers identifying potential sites in China, including Xinjiang, capable of housing ground-based systems that could reach satellites.
Okay, lasers. Unsettling. What's next? High-powered microwave weapons, HPM, what do they do?
HPM weapons are designed to basically fry a satellite's electronics. They generate an intense burst of electromagnetic energy, like a targeted EMP or a massive power surge.
So, not damaging the structure, but the guts, the electronics.
Exactly. The article talks about front door attacks, where the energy gets in through the antennas, and backdoor attacks, exploiting maybe tiny gaps in shielding.
And the key thing here, I guess, is attribution.
Precisely. An HPM attack doesn't leave debris. It's hard to prove who did it. It offers deniability, which is very attractive in sort of gray zone conflict scenarios.
And the article mentions these could be deployed from the ground or even from co-orbital platforms, satellites operating near the target.
Yeah, that adds another layer of difficulty in figuring out the source. Makes tracing it back very challenging.
Deniability seems to be a running theme here.
It's a major factor. Now, moving on. Electronic warfare, or EW. Specifically, satellite jamming. This might be a bit more familiar.
Right, like blocking radio signals. So interfering with satellite communications or navigation signals, the article mentions are GS-32 for comms and GPS Navis for navigation.
That's the idea. Ground-based jammers can just overpower the signals going to or from the satellite, essentially cutting it off, blanketing an area so GPS doesn't work, for example.
And the advantage for the attacker?
Well, as the article points out, Chinese analysts apparently see EW as less provocative than blowing something up. It can be temporary, reversible, you just stop jamming.
Simpler, less risky politically, perhaps. Okay, next up, cyberattacks. This feels very current, very insidious. How do you hack a satellite?
Well, you usually don't target the satellite directly in space. You go after the ground control systems.
The infrastructure on Earth that manages them, like ISRO's tracking network.
Exactly. The ISRO telemetry tracking and command network, ISTRAC, is mentioned as vulnerable. If you can breach those ground stations, you could potentially disrupt operations, maybe manipulate the data coming down.
Manipulate data. The article gives the example of tampering with Cartosat-3 imagery. That's terrifying, making military decisions based on fake images.
It's a chilling possibility, absolutely. Imagine the potential for miscalculation. The article also notes cyberattacks offer a controllable attack range and can often be recovered from relatively quickly, making them flexible.
And we've seen this happen, right? The Russian cyber attack in 2022 against a commercial satellite communications provider.
Yes, that Viasat hack was a major real-world example. It showed the potential impact on communications across a wide area. It's not theoretical.
Definitely not. Okay, finally, the article mentions co-orbital systems. This sounds quite advanced. Microsatellites, robotic arms.
Is sophisticated stuff. We're talking about smaller satellites designed to get close to other satellites. The article brings up a 2008 incident, BX-1, and China's experiments with robotic arms on satellites like Shijin-17.
What could they actually do up there, close to another satellite?
Well, the concern is they could suddenly interfere, maybe nudge a satellite slightly off course, block its sensors or solar panels, maybe even grapple it or attach something to it. The article mentions the Shijin-21 satellite moving a defunct Chinese satellite demonstrating capability.
Wow. And again, the key is subtlety. No big explosion, no obvious debris cloud.
Exactly. It could look like a malfunction, deniability again. They could act like parasitic systems, silently disabling or degrading another satellite's function.
Okay, so summing up China's potential toolkit. Lasers, HPM, jamming, cyber co-orbital systems. It's a pretty comprehensive suite of non-kinetic options.
It certainly paints a concerning picture for India's space assets, which are increasingly vital.
Right. So that leads us to India's response. The big one discussed is Mission Shakti, our 2019 ASAT test. What was the significance of that?
Mission Shakti was huge. It demonstrated India joining a very exclusive club of nations with proven anti-satellite capability. We showed we could intercept and destroy a satellite in low Earth orbit, LEO.
Using what kind of technology?
It was a direct descent kinetic kill weapon. Basically, a missile launched from Earth hits the satellite. The article notes it was a modified Prithvi defense vehicle Mark II, part of our missile defense system.
And the intercept itself was impressive, right? High speed, precise.
Extremely. The closing velocity was over 10 kilometers per second. It required incredible precision.
And India made a point of testing it at a very low altitude, targeting our own Microsat-R satellite at about 274 kilometers. Why was that important?
Crucially, it was designed to minimize space debris, unlike China's 2007 ASAT test, which was much higher.
That one created thousands of pieces of junk, didn't it? Still up there.
Yes, over 3,000 fragments, many still orbiting and posing a risk. India's low-altitude test meant most debris would decay and burn up in the atmosphere relatively quickly, a much more responsible approach.
That's a key distinction. But the fundamental problem with any kinetic kill weapon, as the article points out, is debris, right? The Kessler syndrome risk.
Absolutely. That's the nightmare scenario, collisions, creating more debris, leading to more collisions, potentially making entire orbital band unusable for decades. So even a responsible kinetic test carries inherent risks.
So while Mission Shakti was a major technological feat and important for deterrence signaling,
it has limitations when you're facing these non-kinetic threats we've been discussing. The article puts it well. It's like using a sledgehammer against scalpels.
Explain that mismatch a bit more.
Well, China could use a laser to temporarily blind a satellite, or jam its signals, or subtly nudge it with a co-orbital robot. These are deniable, reversible in some cases, and create no debris.
Okay.
India's main demonstrated response is to physically destroy a satellite. That's overt, highly escalatory, generates debris, potentially harmful to everyone, including India. It's a completely different scale and type of response.
It doesn't really match the potential provocation.
Not directly, no. And the article also mentions that Chinese analysts have apparently questioned how relevant India's low-orbit test is against their military satellites, which often operate in higher orbits like MEO or GEO.
That's a fair point. The physics of hitting something much higher up is different.
It is. Plus, there's the numbers game. The article estimates India has around 80 to 100 satellites, while China has perhaps 700 or more.
So we're potentially more vulnerable. Losing even a few key assets would hurt us more.
That's the implication. A larger constellation offers more redundancy.
So this really highlights India's dilemma, doesn't it? How do you respond effectively to a silent, possibly deniable, non-kinetic attack?
It's a huge challenge. Do you retaliate kinetically, risking escalation and debris? Or do you do nothing, which might signal weakness?
It seems our current focus on the kinetic ASAT capability, while important technologically and something UPSC aspirants need to know about,
Might not be the perfect deterrent against China's preferred methods in space, which seem to lean towards the non-kinetic.
So what is India doing? The Defense Space Agency was set up.
Yes, the DSA was established in 2018, and work is ongoing on a military space doctrine. These are definitely positive steps showing increased awareness.
But the core challenge remains.
Yes, developing the specific strategies and perhaps even our own non-kinetic capabilities to deter and respond proportionally to these kinds of threats. That's the critical next step and a key area for strategic focus you should track for your UPSC prep.
Okay, let's quickly summarize the key takeaways for everyone listening, especially those focused on UPSC preparation.
Sure.
First, China has built up a significant and growing arsenal of non-kinetic counterspace tools, lasers, jammers, cyber, HPM, co-orbital systems. These pose a real silent threat to India's satellites.
Second, India's mission Shakti demonstrated an impressive kinetic ASAT capability, a technological milestone. However, it has limitations as a deterrent against these more subtle, deniable, non-kinetic attacks and carries the risk of space debris.
Right. And for you, the UPSC aspirant, really getting your head around this evolving space warfare landscape is crucial.
Absolutely. It impacts national security, technology policy, international relations, all core UPSC topics.
Yes.
Analyzing these complex challenges is key.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Given how silent and deniable these non-kinetic attacks can be, what kind of early warning systems or defensive measures should India even prioritize? That seems like a massive challenge.
It is.
Yeah.
And beyond national measures, how do we strengthen international norms to maybe prevent escalation in space before it really gets out of hand? That's another big question.
Vital questions indeed. Well, if you found this deep dive useful for your UPSC prep or just for understanding these critical strategic issues,
Please do like, subscribe, and maybe leave a comment. Let us know if you have more questions or other topics you'd like us to tackle.
and just to reiterate, the information we discussed today was primarily based on an article from Suraja.